Welcome to the Networking Star Podcast. I'm Jeffery Boyle. Here I interview peak performers in their industries, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and athletes who encourage us to have, be, and do more in life. Today, I have Jacqueline Matoza, and she is on an aggressive mission of making as many millionaires as she can. She has an impressive history of success as a CPA, real estate investor, millionaire mindset coach, interior decorator, and educator. She even used to be an international tax director. Her passion lies in designing homes, but she saw firsthand from her wealthy clients that real estate is one of the soundest investments anyone can make to build wealth. So, welcome to Networking Star, Jacqueline.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored.
That's a really impressive resume for a CPA, right? So,
Yeah.
So how did you go from being a CPA to a millionaire mindset coach, real estate investor? Real estate investor, I kind of see it, but you have a really great personality for a CPA. So that's a compliment, by the way. So,
Thank you. Yeah, no, I hear it all the time. You're not an accountant. I'm like, I am. I do taxes too. It's like the nerdiest part. I started my first job ever when I was 15 was at a real estate firm. And I saw this old little, she must have been in her 80s, this lady dropping, she dropped by the office every first through the fifth. And I always had big mail carriers, those bins that they used to bring in. I'm aging myself now. Big mail carriers of envelopes every single month from the first to the fifth. And I was like, man, and I was so intimidated by her because she was British. So she was very, stoic. And I was so intimidated by her, but I would always take her mail carrier out because I knew eventually I'd get it in and be like, hey, so what is all this? You like robbing a bank or something? And I made the joke finally. And she was like, oh, those are my rent checks, honey. I'm not really a realtor unless it's like, million plus homes, which back then, now it's like 10 million, right? The equivalent, 15 probably. And so she was like, yeah, unless it's like a million plus home, I don't really waste my time. It's not worth getting out of bed. I just like buying buildings and like, that's how I make my money. She's like, it's the only way, honey. And I was like, oh, okay. She always had a new car every year. She had all this jewelry. And I was like, man, this girl really figured it out. So I knew that real estate was really going to be my end game. And so the one thing she did tell me, and one piece of advice was, as long as you can understand money, you'll always have it. So go learn it. And that's why part of the reason why I went to be a CPA. And I was like, okay, if I learn money, I always heard her in the back of my head, like, if I learn money, I'll be able to figure this out. So I did. And my first high net worth client was a case study for me. I was pumping out this tax return and the guy made $30 million. And I finished the tax return and it's a total tax due, not like tax remaining due, right, after payments. Said $1,000. And I was like, oh my God, I think I messed up this tax return. But I literally triple checked every single box of every single form that came in. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sure I did this right. So I walked into my senior manager's office. I was like, I think I did something wrong. He's like, nope, you did it perfectly right. That's exactly what I expected. And I was like, what? So I made him break it down for me. And the power of saving taxes is really in commercial real estate. And so I knew at the end, like, I was going to learn real estate and learn investing early. So I bought my first place when I was 22, and I just kind of worked my way up to like luxury flips and subdividing buildings in San Francisco, and then moving my way up channel.
Well, it's super impressive. I was going through your biography as we were talking about it, and there's no question that you have learned a lot from your millionaire clients. They're in Vegas. I lived there for a period, and there are some really amazing properties there of all kinds, all the way from condos to up on the hill there. There are some huge, huge properties. You've given a little bit of clue of what you've learned from your millionaire clients, and you've started to emulate. What's the number one thing that you learned from, of course, making $30 million and only having to pay $7,000? That's pretty impressive.
1,000.
One of the things,
1,000.
1,000. Oh my goodness.
1,000.
That is crazy. So, sometimes people critique the rich for saying, how can you make so much and pay so little? Well, they're following the rules that the government has created. And I think that's one of the big differences between the rich and the poor, is that they know how to use the rules. Yeah. So explain a little bit about really what motivated you in addition to that, and what you've learned from some of these millionaires.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's a lot I learned. I don't come from money. I'm self-made, and my family's like average. Struggling, definitely struggling. And I think the first lesson that I really learned at the firm was we had to move $5 billion in like 30 minutes, and I like panicked. I literally was like, $5 billion in 30 minutes. How are you going to do this tax free? I'm like new to this. What in the heck? And the partner literally grabbed me and she's like, get in my office. And she handed me a book. And she's like, I'm going to tell you one thing you need to learn real quick. Money is not emotional about you. Don't be emotional about money. She's like, we're going to do something that's mathematical. We're going to follow the laws and we're going to follow the rules. You're going to read me off a bunch of percentages and I'm going to figure out where the money is going to come from and where we're going to put it. And I was like, okay. And so literally all I had to do was like a Bible, a tax Bible, and it was like every country and like the dividends between countries and the dividend withholding rates. And I was like, okay, I've got this. And it was super petrifying though, because I was like sweating and she could tell, and that was like the first lesson I learned from one of the tax partners. And she was like, look, knock it off. It's not necessary. And that really hit deep in my core because I was like, man, it is just a tool. And the rich really view it as a tool. It's a game to them. It really is. It's like, how much can I not pay this year? And how do I structure this? And they really learn the rules. They really know how to do it. And it's really impressive for me. So I think that is like the key thing I had to learn was, really use money as an object to do something for you. You have to spend money to make money. You have to put it somewhere in order for it to bring back. And there's always calculated risk, so no investments bulletproof. But you can make them pretty sound so that if you lose money, you can take the deductions and, you get them offset in taxes. So there's always a balance. And so I think that's like the key thing I learned from millionaires. The other thing is I was always so envious that like they could make so much and do so little. But then I really quickly learned that the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is millionaires do the work and billionaires make the relationships happen. And when I saw that, and I saw that firsthand, like all of the CEOs and CFOs are on the golf course nonstop. And I'm sitting here slaving away. I was like, something is not right. So I knew really quickly, okay, certain golf country clubs are the place to be. Certain hotels are the place to be. But really, like the people who made the most money, even at Ernst & Young, the top partners, they were doing breakfast, lunch, and dinners. Breakfast, lunch, happy hour, dinner. They were always rotating and socializing. And it was one of those things that they learned really quickly the power of delegation and working themselves out of a job. Most of the people at the top had the belief of like, I have to reach one arm down and one arm up to move up. Otherwise, if I don't have someone to pull me up, I'm going to have to do that job and the new job. So most people are inherently lazy. So I would say they definitely work smarter than the average soul, and they learn the system really quick.
Yeah. Well, so you've talked about, being around some of these super successful people, and obviously, so it sounds that you had some experience in one of the big tax firms to be able to, at an early age, to be able to see some of these guys and women and men that make so much money with it. What would you say for you personally have been the significant challenges that you've had to overcome on this entrepreneurial journey? Because you talked about having the job security when we went through some of your information, we got to know each other. You had the security, but all of a sudden you took the leap. So yep. What you learned it, it's one thing to learn it. It's a whole other thing to start to do it. Absolutely. What are the obstacles you've had to overcome on this entrepreneurial journey? Sorry.
That is $1 million question. I think I made like one fatal flaw, and if I was doing it all over again, I would do it totally differently. But I think the key for me was definitely building my cash and building it while I was sleeping and not doing the work. So I really quickly was invited into a syndication when I left my public accounting job. Some of the top executives were investing in a fund, and they were like, hey, we know you're into real estate. Like, do you do syndications? And I was like, no. And they were like, well, your bonus check's coming out. Why don't you put it in this fund and let's see how you do, I immediately regretted not putting more. And I was like, my fear held me back, right? My fear of like, well, I'm only going to put enough in that if I lose it, I won't be upset, right? And I think that's the right strategy when you're trying something new. It's like you have to be willing to lose it all to gain everything. And you have to test the waters calculated, right? So I knew I could see the numbers, I could see the math, I could see what was going on. I understood it all. I understood, the return rates and everything. But for me, that was like one thing that was crucial, was like building that cash flow and building that lump sum so that when I got out, I still had rental properties. I still was able to like float and break even at a minimum on my, businesses with marketing costs, everything. And so it really was a mindset game, going from like having tons of money coming in your pocket and lump sums coming in your pocket to, okay, for the next 2 to 3 years, I'm going to just break even. And I need to break even in order to get my hamster wheel chugging, in order to build that cycle. And I've seen this on so many incubator companies and pre-IPO baby companies that we were advising to get off the ground. But it's like one thing to watch them and like coach them and like cheer them on and to take them through the IPO right next to them side by side with these like 23 to 28-year-old kids, and then it's a different thing to do it.
Yeah.
For sure. So mindset, I actually had a moment this weekend where I was like, oh man, like if there was ever anyone I would bet on, it's 1,000% me. But the people who are flooding into my commercial real estate business to partner with me, like the powerhouses and the names, the brand names that have been in the industry for like 30 plus years, and asset management firms that are international, like, hey, we want to partner with you. It's been super overwhelming. And like my inner self was like, I don't think I deserve all of this kindness, and I'm having a hard time trusting it. And how do you find that grace of like professional skepticism where I'm interviewing them as much as they're interviewing me, but also that balance of like, okay, don't overprotect yourself, like balance the grace with all of that, and the gratitude, and take a deep breath. It was definitely one of those weeks. It's been a few weeks where I'm like, man, this has been a roller coaster, and I got to get my mind in check for the upcoming months because we've got to grind it out. I mean, we're launching a massive campaign right now, and we've got to go raise money. I don't have time to be emotionally distracted. So I think mindset has been the hardest, because right when you're about to jump off an emotional cliff, you have to pull yourself back, because the more you waste on your emotions and being illogical, the more you're not being productive, and like the more drained you become, and then you can't focus, and then you can't get, like, I mean, I pride myself. I can work 20-hour days easy, like that's a blink. I'm like firm trained, I went 8 days without any sleep or 30 minutes of sleep, so I'm really trained to be a powerhouse and a workhorse. And people don't ever acknowledge that side. You can't be afraid to work hard and give everything. You have to give everything, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one will buy your product. No one will buy your services. No one will buy into you. And to me, that's like the mindset, the millionaire mindset that I always tell people. Like, I don't have imposter syndrome because I know myself. I've tried myself out. I've tested myself ever since I was a teenager, So I've thrown myself into the fire and said yes to every opportunity. Definitely foot faulted, but I always came out alive and better, and with a catapult of leveling up. So you gotta have faith. I think that's the other thing. I would say those 3 things are like the hardest, learning to break even and be okay with that. Learning, that mindset of like, okay, my emotions right now, I need to take an hour, go for a walk and like sit with myself. I need to cry it out. I need to do whatever I need to do, get my fears off my chest and just say goodbye. And then, yeah, I would say have faith, like believe in yourself. You've got to.
You've had some, as we were going through some of your history, you have had some examples from your clients, of course, but you've also had some mentors. So many times, new entrepreneurs who do have some of that imposter syndrome that they have to get through, start to have some success. And if they don't have the right mentors, or if they didn't have the right mentors, that can actually shut them down. Why don't you talk a little bit about why it's so important for you that in your past and even your present, to be able to have the right mentors to get you through different struggles.
That is, oh God, mentors and coaches are invaluable. Like everyone thinks I'm insane, but I had a pretty crazy childhood, just moving countries at the age of 5 and not understanding anything and why everything is so different.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of trauma from those kind of events. And so, I've probably invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into myself, either through coaches or therapy, like trauma therapy, digging it out, going down into Pandora's box and sitting with those emotions, not running, not coping, not, just sit with them and feel them and like own them and accept them and have no judgment, but curiosity and move them, right? Like you have to learn to like reframe really bad events. And I think if I didn't have that curious mindset and that I will never fail, I will not. I had a coach pick me up when I was 16, and he was like, "Hey, dude, you're ripe for the Junior Olympics. Like, I could teach you how to pole vault, and I'll get you into the finals." And I was like, "I have never even pole vaulted, right? Like, can we just learn how to pole vault and have fun?" And he was like, "Sure." So I think I'm really good at like everyone wants to see the end, but I'm really good at taking the first step and like bringing it back to something that's less overwhelming. And I think I learned that from the feel of like being in sports. Like if you think about, oh, today I have the state invitationals, I have the Stanford Invitational, like I'm going into these massive things, and you think about that and you focus on that, you're going to choke. So I think being an athlete at a very young age, I was in soccer when I was 5, really helped me learn to manage and regulate that pressure. But trust me, I'm like the worst at putting internal pressure on myself. So that was like, I actually hired a business coach when I left corporate America. I spent probably like
Probably a
30,000.
lot of money. Yeah. People
Yeah,
don't understand how expensive, but you're renting their mistakes, right? You're
absolutely.
renting their mistakes to be able to get to where you want. You can either make it yourself or you can have a pro who's been there to get you through it.
Yeah, he came in. I spent probably total $30,000 to $45,000 with him. But you know what's great about like having somebody like that? And he was a trained psychologist. He was teaching me sales and marketing, which I knew nothing about. Like my biggest weakness ever: technology, sales, marketing. I'm like, give me the numbers, give me the money. I could be a CFO today if I wanted to be, kind of thing. And so I really had to like learn a different persona, like more of a CEO persona, and learn, because if you don't have leads, you don't have sales. If you don't have sales, you have no money, you have no business, right? So like I really had to reverse engineer my looking at businesses personally. And then from there, coaches can always see what you're struggling with and you can't. Like we all have these massive blind spots that everybody else can look at our lives and be like, oh, that person's such a train wreck because of da da da, right? And I invite everybody to go and ask all the people who know you really well and be like, what would you say my biggest Achilles heel is? Because you'd be surprised if you genuinely want their answer, they will give you the best feedback ever. And you're like, and it's hard to receive because you want to fight it and you want to be defensive, but you're like, I'm going to sit with this one. If you're brave, you're going to sit with it. You're going to swallow the jagged pill and you're going to own it, because the sooner you take accountability and 100% ownership over everything that happens to you in your life. Your partner cheated. It's your fault. Somebody screwed you. It's your fault.
Yeah.
Everything is your fault. And if you can get to that point of acceptance and surrendering, you can literally catapult your life so much further. And also, they can also see the battle that's happening between your 2 ears, because the past is in the past. You will never be able to replicate that today. I will never be back in my parents' house being a child ever again. It's just not possible. But it takes rent space in your head. And the more you reenact it and relive it and rehash it and bring it forward, the more you're looking back, so you can't go forward, right? And the only reason it's alive is because you're allowing it. And it really is that battle with yourself. And like that was something last year I really took on. I took the bull by the horns and like jumped. And it was intense. I mean, it's the hardest battle. And I'm like, God, like all these things my mom used to yell at me about, I 100% am keeping it alive because I'm beating myself up now when my mom isn't even here to beat me up. My mom doesn't even know what I do. The other day, she's like, oh, I didn't know you were like the head of international tax at 28. And I was like, thanks, Mom. I'm glad I'm like aspiring to do all these great things because of my inferiority complex from you. And you're like out to lunch. So it was like super funny moment for me to realize like, Jacqueline, your inferiority complex is all self-imposed. And it was self-imposed, and you've been working on getting rid of it since you were 29. And here your mom is, she could give two shits about your accomplishments, and you're sitting here like it's taking rent. And I just started laughing. I was like, man, humans are hilarious. We're such hilarious psychological creatures. So yeah, coaches are like, they're going to give you that rope to pull you out of your own situation. And they're also going to show you the humor in your own stupidity, where you want to take it really personally and be really upset. And if you have a good coach, they use a lot of humor to be like, yeah, it's cool. I know exactly how that is. Or like, my coach is always like, how's that working out for you? And he just starts to laugh. And I'm like, really, it's not.
Well, you certainly have a super broad example of the different successes that you've done. And really, the more successful you are, the more ability you have and more means, time and means that you have to help other people.
Yeah.
One of the things that I talk a lot about is owning your life, having the time, money, and freedom, health,
Yeah.
to work where you want, when you want, and with who you want. It was really interesting as I went through the write-up that you had submitted, and you talked to one of my team. You had a definition of freedom that was very similar to that, being able to work where you want, when you want, with who you want. That's the ultimate freedom, that last one, with who you want. That's a big deal to really knock the bozos out of your life and do what you want on your own terms. To wrap up, we've covered a lot of different topics that have helped you be successful. Talk about what freedom means to you as an entrepreneur and how it is that you are going about trying to help other people achieve that same freedom.
Yeah, I was actually talking to this about yesterday with someone and about this exact topic. I think for me, having come out of the other end of, the spin cycle in the washing machine, so many people are in survival mode and they're in this rat race and they have no understanding of how to get out and no way of understanding when you have golden handcuffs, how do you get out and land that plane as softly as you can without crashing and burning and having those emotional situations, right? And I work a lot with a lot of doctors, dentists. They have a lot of trauma from their first responder experience, right? And it's one of those things, like I always tell them, I'm like, you know what, the sooner you just grab the bull by the horns and accept what is, and you look it square in the face and you say, you know what, I have nothing to lose and everything to gain, the sooner you will find your freedom. And freedom to me is something that, like, you don't know you're free until you're doing something that is bigger than you. And you're doing something bigger than you because it takes off. It's not hard. You do it because you love it. You do it because you have a passion for it. It's not work anymore. Our commercial real estate business, which I use to help my clients tax plan, it's one of the vehicles we use. I shut a ton of stuff down. I said goodbye to a lot of those bozos, right? Like I was like, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. I'm still saying no, thank you to people. It's like my favorite thing. The more I say no, the more comes to me. And the more I realize, like, we restructured everything and launched our business this year, 2023. And it's one of those things, like, you're doing something right when you have people who you would only dream of working with, and you could only imagine seeing them on a TV screen or seeing their name on a billboard or on a huge building that's being built. And they're coming to you saying, you know what, I believe so much in you. Like our contractor, we're gonna pay us at cost and we'll take money out of the equity. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, who does that with a brand new company? And he's like, no, you guys have more licenses than any other company, and your plan to scale is better and more solid than any company I've seen in the top 2, 3. You're knocking the third out of our area. So I know I can help you and pay it forward, but I also know you guys are already doing this not for you. You're paying it forward, right? Like my partner's a Marine, and his whole mission is to help military people get out and not have financial distress and difficulties. So, you know, a lot of them know how to do construction. A lot of them know how to do things. So we can put them on our teams very easily, seamlessly, get them a paycheck from day one and get them investing day one. So when you have those kinds of things, an international asset management fund, you know, they're like, hey, let's build you a fund. And I'm like, how much? Like, we're only trying to do 250 million of assets this year, and you're trying to take us with an extra zero. I'm like, I don't know about that. And so I'm like, oh my God, you have those moments, right, where you inherently doubt, but like, you know, you're free when what you're doing is bigger than you, and other people feel it, see it, like they know you're going to eat, sleep, breathe it, and they know that you're not going to fail because you got a lot on the line, and they're going to sit there and partner in with you. They're like, I need to pay it forward. I need to give back. You know what? Let's go. You know what? Let's go bigger. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Like, can we give my team a few test runs first to make sure we've got this? Because like, you know me, I'm very risk averse, right? I'm like, let's take this car out for a test drive first. And they're like, no, we're all in. And I'm like, oh man. Like, so when you have that kind of conviction behind you, and you have that kind of, you know, that is free. That is freedom. You know, like, we aren't here to line our own pockets, and like, nowhere have I ever said my goal is to be a billionaire. That's just not even on my realm of parameters. I would never, you know, I would definitely be Jeff Bezos' wife. Like, I would go and buy, you know, somebody's engagement ring and help change somebody's life. I would never ever want to amass that kind of wealth. It's just not me. You know, I get asked all the time, do you have employees? I'm like, no, every one of my people who work for me are partners. I don't pay them. They get a percentage of my profits, because that's only fair. That's only right? If we're succeeding, you're going to succeed with me, and we're all going to succeed together. I don't do this by myself. I'm not Jeff Bezos, who wants to pay everybody $15 an hour and go buy jets on the backs of their labor. You know, it's just not me. So it's one of those things, like, when you build your business uniquely, you think about other people more than you think about yourself. And you're just there to be a facilitator, make those marriages happen, make that stuff happen. It just so much easier, and that you feel free. Like, I wake up every day and work, and I don't even feel like I'm working. You know, I'm like, oh man, that was such a great, I have a client call me. He's like, hey, I need a coaching session right now. Like, I'm going to jump off a cliff. Can you please like hold space for me? Absolutely. You know, and to me, that's like an honor. Like, I cherish that they feel safe with me and they feel willing, especially men. You know, I work in a man's world. It is rough. I have a lot of masculine traits, you know, so when people open up, like, you know, you're winning, you know, you're doing something right. And you can't get that trust in other people until you trust yourself. You can't get that safety and security until you give it to yourself. So like, freedom is not monetary, you know, it's the, I don't know if you've read the book, The Happiness Project, or any like studies on happiness. Like, you're the happiest when you give and you're connecting. So solopreneur life, it's not my jam. I'm an introvert, and it's not my jam. I'm like, I feel so disconnected, you know? So it's like, when you learn the things that are going to make you successful, and reward you, right? You're going to feel full and happy. And those are it. Like, when I have a client call me and be like, you're changing my life, and I'm having a meltdown, and I know I have a 3 to 5 year plan to get out, because you showed me on paper, and I'm hanging on by a thread, but like, this gives me hope, right? And like, if I can give hope to somebody and a plan to $1 million, that's all I can do, you know? And once we
I think that the thing that you're basically saying is the freedom to you, the more you talk, the more it sounds, is the ability for you to work with who you want. And, you know, sometimes people worry about freedom of the ability to do very little. I think the happiest high achievers are the people who are constantly progressing and helping those around them. And that's what it seems to me, that your freedom comes from that,
100%.
your ability to work with the people that you want to.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lonely road at the top. I've seen a lot of very wealthy people. It's extraordinarily lonely. I'm like, I don't want to be up there by myself. You know, like, it's inevitable. It's coming my way. I have to now make decisions, like, who's going to be on this roller coaster ride with me, and who's going to be the one making me laugh when I'm not, and vice versa. You know, it's really one of those things, like, it's intangible. You can't buy it. You know what I mean? It's something you can't buy. Like, freedom is something you self-make, and you have to go in. You know, there's not one person. Your first million's the hardest. Once you get $1 million, you can get 2, 3, 4, 5 really quick, you know, and you don't get that first million until you reconcile and you meet your maker and you have those moments with yourself where you're like, okay, this is not serving me anymore. I need to let it go. And it's funny. Some people can make tons of money and they don't have that, but they have a hard time with a team. They have a hard time. I mean, it's brutal. So to your point, like, yeah, you want to make sure everybody feels like they're committed and they're bought in and they're going to be there. And I don't like training people. I'm lazy. I want everyone to just be happy and know that they can't get paid like this anywhere else. They're not going to get the training and the coaching. I still to this day have people in the tax space. They're like, I'm only at the top because of you. You're the only person in my entire career who trained me. And I'm like, that to me is life, right? Like I gave them something no one else could. And like when you do that, that's what's the most, it's invaluable, right? You can't put a price tag on it. Like it's priceless, right? MasterCard, it's priceless.
Yeah. Well, you certainly, for an introvert, you really have a lot to share, and I'm super grateful to have you on here. Where can they find you, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I have all kinds of fun stuff on Instagram about real estate, money, mindset. We're blowing that out. My website, JacquelineMatoza.com. I'm the only one. If you Google me, you'll find my HGTV fun on TV. You can give me some feedback. I always love to see what people say. You're at the mercy of the editors as well. But yeah, it's been a fun ride, and never say no and just go for it and jump in. Like that would be my advice for anybody starting out. And if you have a plan, you won't fail, and believe in yourself, So I think anywhere on the internet, I'm the only Jacqueline Matoza. I can't screw up. I can't. Everything's out there.
Well, you are a CPA that is certainly not boring, and you have such a wonderful story. It's the kind of thing that we could go for a long time, but I'm so grateful to be able to have you on here. So check her out on Instagram and her website, Jacqueline Matoza. We'll make sure we'll put it in also in the description here. So thank you for being on.
Yeah,
and we are super grateful for the words that you gave these entrepreneurs out here. There's a lot to be learned from what you've shared. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.